I'm Michael Quinn, and I'm talking to you from Montreal today. And I'm with my colleagues, Peter and Brenda. And the three of us work for a group called Taking It Global. And we have a federal grant to introduce coding and digital skills and robotics to students all across the country. And we are part of a nonprofit based in Toronto called Taking It Global, but we have a program called Code to Learn. That's a specific section or part of Taking It Global. We're really happy to have one of our colleagues here today, Jennifer. She works for a wonderful group called Hackergal. It's also a nonprofit based in Toronto, and they also have received federal grants to introduce coding, but for a very specific group. Namely girls in grades 6 to 9, because I think we all recognize that girls are not properly represented in STEM fields in universities. So the objective and the mission of Hackergal is to promote an interest in digital skills, coding, and robotics to girls of that age group. So what Jennifer is going to do today, it's the first of 3 webinars that she'll be doing. And she's going to show us today the basics of making an interactive video game. So as Peter may have mentioned, and you may have heard, if you're new to Lynx, just watch this video, and it is being recorded. And slowly tomorrow, the day after, you can go through the webinar at your own pace, and you can get lynxcoding.club is where you get the software for free. So it costs nothing for Canadians at lynxcoding.club. So this will last about 45 minutes. So we're a little pressed for time. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Jennifer, and I'm going to turn off my video. And we'll follow the questions in the chat. And if there's something that's coming up a lot, we'll interrupt you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer. As Michael mentioned, I am the curriculum designer for Hackergal. So what that really means in my day-to-day is that I am constantly thinking about different lessons and how I can actually teach young girls how to code on their computers and in fun and different ways. I'm also just shy of a decade of being a secondary teacher. So I've been teaching all across Ontario as well as China. I've lived in Paris. I'm kind of an international traveler, so to say, and I'm really excited to be here today because, as Michael mentioned, we have a 3-part series where I'm going to be teaching you guys how to build up a really cool video game and how to add your own features. And I know that we said that this is going to be recorded, but one additional thing that I just wanted to let you guys know is that I'm going to make my template available so that you can access the coding project and see where we left off for next week. That way, if you have any difficulties with your own code, you can still continue on in week 2 and week 3, and you'll have all of the source code that we work on today, as well as a cool surprise. And I'll show you that as we get to it. So when I started, I'm going to share my screen now so you guys can kind of see what I am looking at. Just give me a thumbs up or say something, Michael, if you can see the screen perfectly. It should be something that's showing you Mario Party right now.
Yes.
Beautiful. So back when I was much younger, the very first video game that I had the most fun with was something called Mario Party. And as you can imagine, video games since when I was a young child have drastically changed, whether that's the graphics or the code behind it. But I was always curious how something like this gets made. And for this first webinar, I really want to note that by the end of this webinar, we are not going to be creating something that looks like Mario Party just yet. The creative elements will come kind of at the end, and I'll teach you different ways on how you can kind of go out and seek your own images and then edit them and bring them into your own video game. But for the purpose of today, we're going to be covering kind of the basic framework that you need to set up within Lynx coding to make your game functional and to do all those really cool things that you start to see in things like Mario Party or other video games. Okay. So I'm just going to switch over to my template in Lynx. If those of you are following along that just want to write the code at the same time and have some experience with Lynx coding, feel free to open up your own window now and start your own project. You will be missing a special page in there that I've designed as a template for those of you who are going to be accessing this after. So when you first come into the Lynx platform and open up a new project, you'll always see this lovely turtle in the middle of the screen. And for us to really understand the mechanics in our game, we really need to set up this turtle so that we're able to kind of see what's going to happen to it when we're programming it. So the first thing that I want to do is drag this turtle to my lower left-hand side. And I'm going to change its color so that I can tell the difference between this turtle and other things that I'm using in my project. So to change the color, we simply type set C, which stands for set color. It's the short form of it. I'm going to put 1 and write the color pink. I press enter, and you can see now that my turtle here has changed from the color black to pink. I also would like to change the way in which it's heading. Okay, so my turtle needs to face this way. So the second command that I want to type in my command center is set 90. Set is the short form of set heading. And what you'll see is when I press enter, the nose of my turtle has now changed to 90 degrees. Okay, 90 degrees, and if you're thinking to the right, like a directional compass. The third step that I want to follow with this turtle is I'm going to give it a special name. And I'm just going to go with what the name of the color that I'm using for my turtle. I'm going to call this turtle simply pink. Okay, what I've done here essentially is set up my game field, and this is going to be my main character. Pink the turtle is my main character in this video game. Now, of course, those of you who have learned with Lynx coding before know that eventually you can start to change these turtles into different types of shapes so that it doesn't necessarily look like a turtle. For this webinar, we're going to be working primarily with turtles so that we can see kind of how our video game is going to work before you add all the graphics. So now that I've got my pink turtle set up here, I think the easiest thing to kind of set up is to try and see if I can get this pink turtle to start moving. Okay, I want to have a movement in my video game where my main character is always going to be moving on the screen so that it can start to do really cool different things and features which we'll start to add. So in order to do that, I need to create a movement procedure. And so to write the procedure, I'm going to come over to my procedures pane over here. And I'm going to start, as always, my procedure with the word to. Procedures end also with the word end. So in order for my procedure to function at all, I need to be able to use these two words right here. Next, I'm going to press space, and I'm going to name this procedure move pink. And you can see it's pretty intuitive. My goal here is that Pink the turtle is going to move. Okay. So one thing that's really cool in Lynx is that you want to be able to speak to specific turtles that you're using in your video game. As you guys all know, there's lots of characters that we can kind of see working there, and we may want to make sure that when we're telling a procedure to the turtle that we're actually speaking to the right turtle. So in this case, we know that the name of my turtle is Pink. So I'm going to just write the word pink and put a comma. So that's saying I'm talking to Pink right now. And I'm going to add a forever. This word in itself means exactly how it sounds. It's going to make something happen for forever. Okay? And so with a movement, we want to use the word or the command forward. If you prefer short form, you can also write FD. For this case, I'm going to keep it nice and full worded. And we're going to have the turtle go forward 4, and it's going to have a little bit of a wait in between so that it doesn't just zoom across my screen constantly. Okay, so I've created my procedure here. Looks pretty clean. And one thing I want to do is just press save. Okay, that red dot appears. I don't want to lose any of my work. God forbid something shut down on my computer and then I lose all of you guys. I would love to have, my information saved, because anything I type here won't be saved in my project. So now that we have our movement procedure, we want to test it. want to make sure that it actually is going to cause Pink the turtle to move. So all I have to do here is write my procedure name, make sure I spell it correctly first, and press enter. Most of you right now should be seeing that Pink the turtle is moving across that screen. And it's moving at, a pretty decent pace for right now. Hopefully it's not making anyone at home dizzy. I'm going to stop this for now because I can see that my movement procedure has worked. Pink is moving when I type this, but I need some more things in my game in order to actually make it, function the way that I want. So intuitively, some of the first things that I want to add are buttons. It would be nice to have a start button or a go button that allows Pink the turtle to move when the button is pressed. So what I did here is I simply added a button to my work area. You can see I click the button option here. And when it appeared, unfortunately, it's named nothing at this moment, but we're going to change that. I'm going to right click on my button and I'm going to rename it Start. You can see I've used this one before many a times. And right after that, I'm going to press the apply for now. Okay, I haven't made a procedure for that start button just yet, but I will. The next button I'm going to add is a stop button, because as you noticed before, my Pink turtle only stopped when I pressed this stop button here near the command center. Instead, in our games, we often want there to be some sort of pause or reset button that allows, the movement to actually stop on the screen. So I've added my second button. I'm going to drag it to the top here so it's kind of out of the move path. I'm going to right click on the nothing again and change the label so that it no longer reads nothing. This is my stop button and apply. Okay. One thing you'll notice now is I didn't freeze my button, so I'm able to drag it all across my work area. And if you have someone who is playing your game when the objects like this are not frozen, it means that they will also be able to drag these objects across their work area, which could prove problematic when you start to do more complicated coding in your projects. So one way you can fix that is just to right click and freeze it. Okay, and you'll notice now I can't drag it whatsoever. Okay, so I'm just going to freeze my buttons so they stay in place. And now we're going to start to write the procedures for those buttons. So we're coming back to our procedures pane, and the first one we're going to write is our start button. And I'm going to call this to begin game. Okay, it kind of works well with start. So to begin the game, what do I need to have happen? Well, I want this move Pink procedure to happen when this start button is clicked. So what I do is I type move Pink, press enter, and write end. So we can see here, I've created a procedure that has this procedure hidden inside of it. In order to make this start button functional, I need to right click it and select my procedure from the drop-down menu. And if you remember, it's called begin game. So I select the begin game procedure and press apply. And when I press the start button, what should happen is this turtle moves. But in order to make sure that I don't get you guys too excited too early, I'm going to actually program my stop button first. Right after to begin game, space it out. I'm going to start a new procedure again, and instead of calling it begin game, this is going to be called stop game. The stop game procedure that I'm going to write out is something called stop all. You'll see that it goes green, which lets you know that it's a command that Lynx, the platform, actually recognizes. And when I hover over it, I'll get a definition that what it's going to do is stop all the running procedures and processes, which is exactly what I want to have happen when clicked, because I want the turtle to stop moving. As you can see, I have to end my procedure with the word end. And right now I want to attach that procedure to my stop button. So I'm going to repeat the same steps I did with my start, only this time I will select stop game as my procedure. Now we're going to test it out and see how it works. So you can see the start button has caused the Pink turtle to start moving across my screen. And now if I press the stop, the Pink turtle stops. So right then and there, what you've seen is you've created these two controls, firstly to start your game, as well as to stop the game. And when it started, you have a movement procedure, move pink, that occurs that allows your pink character turtle to continue moving. So that's great, but of course, when we're thinking of games, we probably want to go a little bit more advanced at the time. We want to make sure that we can start to do cooler things, let's say. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an obstacle in our game. An obstacle, right now, it's going to look like a turtle. So I'm just going to add another turtle to my screen. And you'll see the turtle is already in the center, but of course, if it's going to be an obstacle in my game, it needs to be on the run path of the turtle so that if, you know, they collide, something happens. So I'm going to repeat some of the same steps that I did with you earlier so that I can change the color of my turtle and name it. First, I'm going to drag it down to the run path of the turtle so that it's aligned, okay? Next, what I want to do is set its color to blue. So similar to the command you wrote for pink, instead it's set C, and then you're going to do blue with the single quotation mark wrapped around it. Press enter, and you'll see my obstacle turtle has turned blue now. The other thing I want it to do, and this is primarily because as we get a little bit more complicated with our game, we're going to change some of the things that these obstacles can do. For now, I'm going to have it set the heading so that it's facing this turtle, so that each of their noses are facing one another. So if to turn to 90 degrees led to my pink turtle facing it, I have to think about how my blue turtle is going to face the opposite direction. So for those of you who know the directional commands, the best way to write this you can do is 270. Alternatively, say I had this at 90 and it's facing the other way, I could also write -90. You can see how that works if you have any mathematicians watching right now. Either or works. I can do -90 or 270 in this case. Okay. Now, the cool part here is we're going to start to establish an on-touch procedure. And in order to do this, I want to make sure all my turtles are named appropriately. So first things first, you can see that pink turtle is facing blue turtle. And when pink turtle interacts or touches the blue turtle, what I want to have happen is I want this turtle to have to take a step back. I want it to kind of get spooked and back up a little bit. Okay? So in order to do that, I need to create an on-touch procedure. And an on-touch procedure is going to be a little bit more complicated looking than these traditional ones that you see here, because some of the words that you'll see aren't what usually shows up in a procedure. So what I mean by that is, first and foremost, I want to right-click on my blue turtle, and I want it to be so that when the pink turtle touches the blue turtle, it backs up. So on touch of the blue turtle, I'm going to select New under the drop-down menu and press Apply. What you can see has happened over here in the procedures pane is that I've had a comment automatically populate. I think it's really, really important as you are building any sort of coding project for you to actually write comments that actually explain what your procedures are doing. Unfortunately, we can't code 24/7. We have school and work and other sorts of things that keep us busy. So it's always important to have instructions that really allow us to understand what we were working on, what our plans are supposed to do. So what you'll notice here is I'm going to just write a simple comment. This is my on-touch event that causes pink turtle to move back. Anything that's a comment will be gray, remember that. So it won't affect your procedure in any way. It's really just coding guidelines and instructions that you follow or that others who are looking at your project can follow. So you'll notice that this procedure's name is blue touch, and then it shows this new pink line here, touch turtle. So what I want to write now is kind of an if statement, something that happens when it is touched. So I begin it by saying if touched turtle. Okay, so I'm repeating the exact same thing I see typed in pink up here. Okay, and I'm going to say equals, okay, blue. What we're going to do is ask our pink turtle. Notice that I use closed brackets around pink. I'm naming something in my project right now. Ask pink, and I'm going to say back 30. okay? So in hindsight, what should happen right now when I have this touch command, when it actually interacts, it should back up. But let's see, let's test it. So we see it's about to collide. And what happened? It didn't actually work. So what's really important here to note is that I need to debug it. Something's not going right. And so it didn't do what I asked. And I mean, I know what the problem is right now. Maybe you guys don't know at home. But in fact, I attached the procedure to the wrong turtle, it seems. Perhaps now, if I change it to my pink turtle, okay, so blue touch we are looking for in my drop-down menu, which is not showing, sorry, because I clicked on click. So on touch drop-down, we click blue touch. Let's try it again. So now you guys can see that when you debug and when you actually start to look at your code and test the individual procedures, you might notice things that aren't working the way that you want. In this case, with this one on touch feature that we've added, we've now made it so that there's an obstacle, that this turtle can't keep moving forward when it actually interacts with the blue turtle. And that's kind of the beginning workings of where you can start to think about how you could build out your video game and make it do some really cool things other than just stand there as a barrier. We can start to think of how can we take this further. When we think about moving this turtle, what else could it be doing other than moving backwards from the blue? Perhaps we want to have it able to jump, for example. So in this actual template, first thing I'm going to press save so my code is saved. What I've designed for you guys is a new page for you to test a jump procedure. Now I'll explain this in about 2 seconds. What I'm going to show you is that I have a separate tab. This is called Test Your Jump, and this is where all the instructions and code is written for this specific page in my project. I like to use tabs in my project because it keeps my code as clean as possible, and I know what I'm working on a specific procedures tab page. So you'll notice here that my blue turtle has kind of transformed into a mushroom character. And I chose this primarily because I'm used to seeing the mushroom on Mario Party. And I thought that would be kind of cool to show you just a simple thing when it comes to graphics and what you need to be doing when you're building out your own coding framework. So one of the most important things to keep in mind is if we're going to create something that jumps, how do we know it's actually jumping over the barrier that we've created? Now, you can do a lot of trial and error in your own area back in this first initial page, but what might happen is that you might find that you're not getting it right the first time. You have to keep continuously testing it, which might interfere with the way that you've set up your game. But not to worry, this is what this page is for, and feel free to use this as you will. What you've noticed is I've imported my own clip art. I also have additional clip art that I've put here between a mushroom and a boulder rock. And what I'm going to do is try and program this beautiful pink turtle to jump over the mushroom. And then later you can change this using a set shape command to your own obstacles that you kind of bring into your own game. So in order to do that, the first thing we're going to do is press the start button. And what you'll notice on this sample page is that I have a pen line that draws, okay? Now, ideally, what I'm doing here with the pen down feature that's used in Lynx is I'm tracking the movement of my turtle. I want to see, hey, does this turtle actually jump over the barrier? Because if it touches the barrier, it's going to go back, right? And I don't want that necessarily because I want to have a feature where my character can jump over and continue moving on and perhaps collect all the points that I establish in my game, whatever the feature is that I want to have happen. So the really cool thing with using the Test Your Jump tab is that if you actually scroll down, I've created a jump procedure here. And once you've tested and actually made sure that your jump is doing exactly what you want it to do, you can simply copy and paste this code back into the other tab. And you've already kind of pre-designed it so that your jump movement will work. The other really cool thing about this page is you can just press clear screen if it kind of didn't do what you wanted to begin with and it's marking up the page and you want to kind of see it in action again or adjust it. So to show you how this works, I'm going to change the numbers here after FD or forward. okay? Instead, what I'll do is I'm going to maybe build this up. Maybe I'll do 120. And I bet some of you are wondering, okay, well, what's going to happen now that she's changed the values there? Well, let's see. Let's press the start button. Okay. Now, of course, my turtle is moving. I can see that. I want to test it. What we've noticed here is that my jump went a lot higher than it needed to, for example. Now, when you're thinking about coding and coding your own projects, you want to have as efficient code as possible. So moving up did not necessarily improve my project in any way. It could cause some problems as I go down the line when there's multi-processing occurring actually in my game. So I want to try and keep these values smaller to work with because I think that will work better for my current obstacle. All right, so I'll go back down 20 in value. I think that I spend some time there. It's kind of got the movement. I can continue moving and see. Let's see how this works. I'll kind of jump at the same point. And so now what you can start to see is that between the two values that I tested, I can now see which has, you know, the best estimate of a jump for my character to use when trying to overcome this specific obstacle in the game. So I clear screen, I kind of like that. And what I'm going to do is kind of copy this code over into my own game. So I'll just copy it right now, make my life a little bit easier. And I'm going to go back to my original procedures tab. So we're going back to our main screen here where there's a start and stop button and our two turtles. And this time what we want to make happen is have this lovely pink turtle jump over our barrier. We want to integrate the jumping feature within our game. So we need to create a new procedure, a jumping procedure, of course, naturally. So the first thing that I want to do is really add a button in my game that says jump. We'll put it kind of near my controls up here. Stretch this across. Right click on your button and you remember it always is named nothing and we don't want nothing to be what the audience sees. So we're going to change it to, we'll make it capitalized, jump. Right? So then I press apply. And what I'm going to do is now write that jump procedure, but copy and paste the values that I've already predetermined in my last project tab. So when I went over and tested my jump. So instead, I'm going to go 2, and this procedure is simply going to be called jump. What I want to have happen is I want to talk to a specific turtle. And as you can imagine, I want pink, the turtle, to be the one jumping, not blue. So I'm going to name pink. And then right after that, I'm going to put Command V on my keyboard to copy and paste those values below. Now, the only thing left for me to do is to actually end this procedure by writing the word end. And of course, it's not linked to this yet. So even if I press this, it won't work. So what I got to do is right click on my jump, select the drop down menu from the on click, and I want to select the jump procedure. Okay. Now let's bring our turtle back here maybe and test this out. So we have our turtle moving and you can see it's not the same size as the mushroom, right? But my turtle has successfully managed to jump over the blue obstacle. It's not going back. And just to show you that that on touch feature still exists in my game, what you can see here, I'm not going to actually press the jump button. I'm going to show you that the pink turtle can interact with the blue one just as much. So I've created some sort of control game where now the pink turtle will not move unless the player presses jump. Now you guys probably noticed that while I was building this out, I don't really have a reset button in mind. My poor pink turtle right here, I have to drag it back to the starting line. And I think that's kind of inefficient in terms of what I want to have happen in this game. So instead, I'm going to decide to create a reset game button. Okay. So in order to do that, I still follow the same procedures that I've done before where I am adding a button. I'm going to drag this button over here, right click on the nothing, call this reset game. Okay, and I'll freeze it in place as well. Should freeze my jumping one just to be safe. Okay, now right now there's no procedure attached to reset game, so it's not going to do anything. but I want to figure out a way to make sure that this turtle always returns to this spot. This barrier is not moving, right? So it's static. And at this point, I can freeze it in place so that no one can drag it across the screen. But I'm really worried about, Pink Turtle, making sure that when we start the game starts over here from the left-hand corner. And in order for me to think clearly about this, to reset it, I need to know what position this pink turtle is in. So out of curiosity, I'm going to say pink. I'm going to label it pink because that's my turtle's name. And I'm going to use the command show POS, which stands for position. You'll see that when I typed this command, I have these variables or these negative numbers that showed up, but in fact, they're actually coordinates. If you think of the Lynx work area as an X and Y axis, this is where the X and Y axis lines up for Pink Turtle over here. And if I right click, I can see the X core is -362 and the Y is -187. So by writing this simple command, I got the information I need to kind of understand, where is my turtle in this game and where do I want it to start. But that's not enough yet. Now I have to incorporate that information into a reset game procedure. So let's return back over here, and I can just enter it here because I have a little bit of space. And so I'm going to call this procedure reset game. Okay, just following the name of my buttons, it's very easy for me to see, how they're aligned there. And the next thing I'm going to do is make sure that it's pink the turtle that's going to go back to the right spot, right? So pink, comma, and then what I'm going to do is set the position, and I'm going to open my brackets here, and what I'm going to do is copy these values over. Command C on my keyboard, it might be different, Control C on a Windows keyboard or whatever the case may be. My values are now in place. Okay, and I'm going to end it. Now, if I put my pink turtle here, I'm going to want to test this out and see if does it return my pink turtle back to the starting point. But obviously, I haven't attached my procedure to the reset game button just yet. So we right click on reset game, and on click, what do we want it to do? We want it to reset the game. So now I'm going to press apply. And if I test this, my button or my turtle returns back to the area that I just actually programmed by using this show pause, right? Which is exactly what I wanted to do. As we integrate the jumps, some things may happen where my turtle is not facing the right way. So I want to make sure that whenever this turtle starts, that its nose is facing 90 degrees. So just like I did at the beginning, I'm just going to write the set heading position to 90 so that no matter what, that nose will always come back here when the game begins. Okay. So let's try this. If I start it, press the reset, oh, my turtle moves back. It's still moving, of course, because I don't have a stop all feature in my reset game. Instead, I can just press stop, press the reset game, and now I can restart my game and see how it works from there. So right now, what I wanted to say is that we've covered kind of the basic framework of how to set our game up and make sure that it has all of these components we need to start building on it. Of course, this doesn't look like a game quite yet. It doesn't have all the beautiful visuals that we're used to seeing. So I'm just going to switch my tab here to show you just how far we can go with code and what we can start to do and what we will start to do in these kind of upcoming weeks. So, this is one of my original games, and what I have happened is so that when you start the game, these actual barriers touch. You can see that it's kind of dealing with some debugging features at the moment, but this is essentially what's happening is I'm losing lives. Okay, this turtle here, which now has a costume on, it no longer looks like the pink turtle that we're used to. It looks like a bit emoji. It's kind of interfering with the boulders that you see on the screen. And the boulders themselves, they're not static anymore. They're not frozen in place. They're moving at my turtle character. You can also see that I've integrated kind of like an announcement within the game that happens to pop up when you lose lives. this is only kind of one way you can go with your game. If you're used to playing games at home, you know that there's all different types of genres and things that you can code. And so in order for us to get to this spot, we need to start to learn kind of the procedures we're working with and how to make them work and how we can take them just one step further. Of course, you can imagine the coding behind a game like this it's far more intensive. You start to add more procedures and sub-procedures into your game so that it has all these intricate levels that you've now learned how to do. And that's kind of where the creativity comes in. For those of you who are used to Bitmoji or who have some graphic design background, you'll probably love the idea of incorporating your own custom graphics. And I think that's a really cool thing about game development. But we can't get there just yet unless we know the fundamentals of how to actually build the game up from the turtle. And so returning back to our lovely turtle screen, eventually this will look a little bit more colorful, as you can imagine. One of the things that I want to work with is really showing you how you can use the second page, which is our template, to actually incorporate your own. And so as I showed you before, and we have a little bit of time now before I run out of time, I have clip art that's already in this template. And of course, when you have access to this template, feel free to add your own or to use the ones that I have here. What I want to do is I want to work on this page and I want to change this barrier to be a different shape. So it's no longer going to be the mushroom shape, it's going to be this rock over here, which is number 1 for reference. So I'll just press save again because I like to save my project constantly. And the next thing that I'm going to do is make sure that my procedures tab is actually test your jump. And that's because this is the test jump page. So as you know, if I look at this turtle, or if I look at this mushroom or turtle with a costume on, the name of it is called test barrier. And so what I want to do is say test barrier. I'm calling my test barrier turtle and I'm saying, I want you to change your shape. So set shape. I'm going to pick 1. And now you can see that I have managed to change the turtle's costume and it's a little bit smaller of an object. It's frozen in place right now, so I can't drag it at this moment. If I right click it and unfreeze it, press apply, I can now kind of play with it. Perhaps what I want to do is actually try and work with a much, much larger object. So in this case, I would use the command set size. And maybe I'm going to play with the value and say 50. And you can see that's far too big for my project. I think the jump will take over and not be as efficient. So maybe it's slightly smaller. Still too big. Go with 10. Oh. Okay. So next up, I'm going to test my existing jump. We'll press start. Oh, and you can see because this was my last turtle touch, it moved to a certain position as I commanded in my procedures. That I did here, sadly. You can see my test barrier. Okay, I'm just going to lock it in place just to be safe. Let's continue the movement. See what happens. Now, what you'll notice is that it met one criteria. It met the fact that it could go up high enough to jump over the object. But what it didn't do is it didn't last long enough in the air to actually completely go over the object, which means that when it fell down, as you can see by this line that's kind of hidden here behind the rock or the boulder, it fell into the rock. Now, if I were programming a game in which I wanted my character to lose lives if it actually interacted with that rock, you can see that if I landed on this rock, I'd be dead, right? I'd lose all my lives at once, and then that's not really a fun game if you're constantly dying because the jump feature doesn't work. So right now, what we need to do is we need to adjust how long it stays in the air for so that it can completely cover and perhaps land down here. And again, you're going to come back down to your test my jump procedure right here, and we're going to edit. And you can see that the left and the right command control our directional compass. So we know that when it points left, it's usually changing where the nose is heading, and it's headed 100 up. It's only headed 70 across. So we need to adjust that 70 figure, that 70 value that you see here. So let's try and move that up to 90. Oh, not 900, that would be very, very wrong. And we're going to clear our screen and we're going to test it again. So I apologize, my turtle is a little slower. And ta-da! So what you'll notice now that by just changing this one value here, I actually was able to accommodate the size of my barrier here and create the right jump movement, as you can see by the lines that are drawn, so that it completely jumps over it without touching the object whatsoever. Now you can imagine if you have a jump button in your game, it really depends on when the user presses jump, of course, but for the purposes of us, we want to know that the user can actually jump over the barrier if they press the button jump. So what I encourage you to do is when you get these templates and you're thinking about what could the barriers or, the enemy characters be in my game, test your features out on this page first. Make sure that, the mechanics of your game work, and then integrate it back into your game. So right now, this is what we've kind of covered for today. We've built our basic framework. We've built a barrier, and we can kind of make more barriers if we wanted. And there's a really cool way to do that, and it's called the cloning feature. So I know that I have this barrier right here. It's frozen in place. I don't want to maybe have to recreate it or add a new turtle. So I could just clone it, I believe. So blue, clone? No.
The other way around.
Gotcha. Let's try you again. Clone, blue. There we go. Okay, thank you for the debugging, Michael. So what you can see here is I have the turtle, but I can't drag it, and that's because my turtle is frozen. Let's unfreeze it for a second. We'll move it over here, and maybe this time around, we want this to be slightly larger. So let's set its size just bigger. Let's do 30. Oh, that actually was smaller. There we go. So we can see two different barriers here. Put a little bit back, freeze it in place. Okay. Something's going to happen, you'll see. Let's go pink. Okay, so that happens. I jump. Interesting. So what we've done here is while we cloned this blue guy over here, we've actually told a procedure to the pink turtle that says, when you interact with blue, you jump back. When we said blue, we were referring to the name of the turtle, okay? Not necessarily just its color. However, this turtle here is not named blue, which means that when pink interacts with blue, something will happen. But when it interacts with T1, nothing happens, not at this moment anyways. And as this feature starts to get developed, we're going to be doing something called creating lists, right? And I'm gonna stop here for now just because I think that this feature will come into our next webinar. And I'm gonna leave it here to kind of let you ponder about what you think you can do, how we can make lists in our game. And perhaps some of you are new to kind of this coding world, and that kind of is way beyond what you can comprehend right now, just because there's lots of procedures in here. But what we're going to be doing is to try and add additional features in our game, whether that's additional barriers, whether we have a timer, for example, or maybe we want our characters to lose lives. So I'm going to stop here for right now because I have a couple of minutes left, and I figure what we can do is if you have any questions, those of you who are watching, or you want to maybe test out your coding, your projects now, why don't we leave some time, and if you want, type it in the chat, or Michael, you can kind of let me know who needs to talk, and I'll kind of pay attention.
Yeah, nothing yet. So thank you, Jennifer. We'll wait for some questions to come up. We have a comment from Bob that it's really cool. So Jennifer's shown the basics of making this interactive video game. And I know it's really exciting to add clip art and backgrounds and stuff, but you really should start with just plain turtles, whether they're black or blue or pink, and get the mechanics of your game set up and working by doing what Jennifer did. She tested, and then having a user interface, because remember the people who will play your game need to have these buttons to actually get things to move and get things to happen when they click the button. And you know, we saw movement, we saw a user interface, and you've learned the event handler for touching. when any turtle touches another turtle, you know, you can cause something to happen. In this case, it was backup.
Great. Yeah. So as you think about what we're going to do in the next series of webinars, the next thing I really want to show you is how to integrate the lives feature as well as announcements. I think those are kind of the cool things that you saw when I created my project. Another thing that we're going to be working on is making lists and to actually get our barriers moving. So no longer will they be static on the screen here. Maybe we'll have one that doesn't move and one that's coming at us, maybe a character, and you know, our evil character that's coming to get our hero character, whoever your hero character may be.
Right. So this webinar will be available tomorrow for those of you who want to review it, and Jennifer will make her code, her project available too, so you can look at her code too and play along. And I think with that, it's 12:45, so I'll pass the mic back to Peter.
Thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. Appreciate that. Where are you going to make your things available?
Yes, they are available now. What I'll do is I'll share the link on the chat right now so you kind of access the project we were just working on, and then you can post it tomorrow with the video link as well if you'd like.
Okay,
I'm just
that's
going to write that so you can see it. Oh.
So Brenda, you'll grab that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to say thank you. I'll stop the recording, but stick around, folks.